Hi, ladies. This is Mrs. Mattingly. I am sorry that I can't be there with you today, but hopefully this will be a pretty good substitute. Um, what you'll need to do right now is to find the section of guided notes for Unit 2, Lesson 2 in your content library. They will be there for you in the regular spot. And so you'll need to pull those up and then follow along with me as I go through and talk your way through this lesson. The lesson is Unit 2, Lesson 2, and the title is Why Does God Allow Suffering and Evil? And it's not necessarily a question that we're going to answer in this short period that I'll be with you, but it is one that a lot of people ask themselves, and we'll hopefully be able to sort of delve a little bit deeper into that with some of these slides. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So why does God allow suffering and evil? Well, Christians believe that it doesn't really make logical sense to conceive that God is partly evil as a cause of suffering. We believe that He's all good. If we did believe that He was part evil and part good, then it really would deny that He was totally love and total goodness for us. By believing that He is all good, then we know that He's offering us that ultimate future of happiness eternally. Additionally, if we were to believe there's no God, then that really gets rid of any possibility for making sense of all of the pain and suffering of evil in the world. What purpose would all of it have? No one wants to suffer, no one wants to be in pain, and no one wants anybody else to be in pain for the most part. So we don't really understand why that is, but there has to be meaning behind the aftermath of it. So that leaves us with really only one good possibility, and that is, as we've already said in class, that God permits that moral evil out of respect for our human freedom. And therefore, since God is all good, then He allows pain, He allows suffering, He allows evil for a greater good, for a bigger good. And the way that we can sort of relate it is it's similar to how a parent loves a child, and then at some point you do have to allow that child to sort of move away and make their own mistakes. It's not easy for us as a parent. I can very obviously share personally that it's not easy to let your child make mistakes. It's not easy to let them fall or have to watch them get hurt. I always imagine that's got to be what it's like for God, that He must look down on us and really just be saddened and in some ways devastated at some of the things that we do, that we choose to do, even though we know they're wrong, and then some of the things that just happen to us, unfortunately, as a part of the luck of the draw. It is similar to a term called tough love. Tough love is sort of a term that means that you might threaten to remove your support from people who depend on you in an unhealthy way. As an example, I like to always share very candidly that my youngest sister has battled with some different challenges throughout her whole life. Depression being one of them, and also alcohol use, and she has struggled with that, and when she has, it has been a very difficult thing for my family. And specifically, my parents really had to make choices at different times. And it was not always easy for me to be a sibling in that family where my sister was causing difficulties. But a lot of times you have to step back, and my parents did allow her to make mistakes. My youngest sister is still challenged by issues related to her depression because it's not something that's going to go away. And she's every day challenged by her desire to make poor choices. But she's doing so much better now, and I really do attribute that a lot to my parents allowing her to make mistakes, while still being there for her. So it's not perfect in every scenario, but it is somewhat like what God allows us to do. So, as Christians, though, we also believe that we can trust God to be there for us. And that doesn't mean, in the story of Job that we saw, it doesn't mean that God's going to come back and fix it all for us immediately. But it means that He will be there as a source of strength through prayer, through support. It's also different from the idea that God is willing us or intending us or sending pain to us. And at this point, I always stop and say, we have a culture that very much likes to use the terms, God's testing you, or He's sending you a test, or He's just seeing how strong you can be. And I always say, well, if that was me, I would be pretty upset with God for sending me that test. And, I would get really angry and disappointed. And I think that's what causes a lot of people to lose their faith and to be challenged by their faith. Is the idea that, oh, God's up there somewhere in the clouds, throwing down lightning bolts at us, and just for fun, that He's arbitrarily sending us tests. We as Catholic Christians, as Christians in general, don't believe that. There are some people who have sort of jumped on that train, and it's not one that Christians generally subscribe to. So even though you might say that or have said it before, and I'm guilty of that myself in my younger years, or maybe even you have a parent that believes that, and it's nothing wrong with everyone can have their own beliefs, but be very careful about that with yourself personally, because it can lead you down a road of feeling as though God has sort of left you out, and God's never trying to leave you out. He's never trying to test our love, because we believe that that's something that we have for Him no matter what. We also have to remember that the reason why some of these things happen is that we end up allowing ourselves to pull good from those painful moments. The suffering and those evils, whether they're natural or moral evils, we can become more loving as a result of some of those things. It's not fun. No one wants to have to suffer. No one wants to have something awful happen to them. But a lot of times the suffering and the pain that comes from that, we will end up rising up. And God ends up helping us to prevent what is hurtful, something that can hurt us, from becoming harmful. Remember, we talked about the difference between hurt and harm in Unit 1. And He helps us make something good of it instead. And if God hadn't given us that ability to choose the evil, we also wouldn't be capable of choosing the good. We've already, I think, even someone's mentioned that in some of the different walks. So that's a very, very valid point. We have to be able to choose the bad in order for us to be able to choose the good, and to be realizing that that's the right choice. All right, so a couple things to consider and think about. Which approach, maybe, to coping with the problem of pain, suffering, and evil is maybe the easiest? Would it be easier for someone to deny God's existence? Or is it easier for them to think that God is both good and evil? Or is it easiest to believe that there's a good God who allows these things for a greater good? Most people will say that it's easiest to just say, well, there can't possibly be a God, or God must be good and evil. But the right answer is the third bullet, that God is allowing those things and greater good will come from them. And then just something to think about for yourselves. Do you ever think of God as sending you difficulties or suffering to test you or to make you a better person? And if so, then why do you think that you've thought that way? Has it been a family member's influence? Has it been TV, culture, whatever, movies? And then have you ever heard other people say things like, God never sends us more suffering than we can bear? And if that's the case, then what do those things sort of imply about God? If you go back to that sentence, the question, God never sends us. If He's sending it to us, then He's the cause. So again, just really, really be careful about that. God is not necessarily up there sending us suffering or challenges. These things happen, and we are given the opportunity to rise above and do something good with it. So then, if these things continue to happen, why do they happen? Well, we've discussed that, but you might think to yourself, wouldn't there have been an easier way? Why couldn't we have figured out how to be better people without having children to suffer from cancer, or people to be to lose their belongings and their homes in natural disasters, fill in the blank, any other evil that we've discussed. Well, God deliberately didn't program the world. We talked about that when we discussed the origins of the world and Thomas Aquinas' proofs and everything. There was a sort of grand designer, but he didn't program it to be perfect. He left that up to us. We have the opportunity to participate in his design. We have the opportunity to make it more perfect every single day. We can make it better, which is actually a really lofty and huge responsibility. I mean, in fact, it actually should make you sit and think for just a second and kind of go, wow, like we have that responsibility to do that. That's really huge. We can understand this and sort of do something with it by becoming more good and more loving. But a lot of times we have this question, why do unloving people sometimes seem to suffer so little? And then there's people who are deeply good people. They're deeply good and they just keep getting hit. Like the hits keep coming. Something keeps happening to them. And you probably all know who I'm talking about. There's always that one friend or family member that it just seems like they can never get a break. Why do the innocent suffer and then people who, people have never done anything wrong? And for Christians, the answer to that maybe lies in answering another question. Well, why did Jesus suffer? We think of Jesus as the most good, the most loving, the most innocent of all, really. Why did he have to be the one to be tortured, be put on the cross? Why did he have to die? Okay, so stop and think about for a moment. And give that some consideration. We believe as Christians that Jesus' suffering and his death was accomplished for us all. Remember the definition of the Paschal mystery, right? The work of salvation accomplished by Jesus Christ through his life, through his suffering, his death, and then his resurrection and ascension into heaven. And by triumphing over that pain and suffering and evil, Jesus brought us back from the evil and allowed us to have eternal life. His resurrection, then, the fact that he did not end with his death, it responds to that mystery of evil. And it gives us hope. And hope is so critical. It's the most important thing. And in Romans it says that we suffer in what we suffer in this life can never be compared to the glory which is waiting for us. That's big. That's a really big statement. So I want you to use the time that we have in class left to work with your assigned groups. And I'm going to explain to you what you're doing here in a second. On a little activity that I call Screenwriters Workshop. So any of you that are drama people or like to just act or, might be interested in putting yourself out there, then this activity is for you. And if you're a little bit more subdued and maybe somebody who doesn't like to, talk as much, well, you can find some things to do in this one too, because this is going to use all of your talents. You're going to need to kind of put it together. And some of you that are performers will be great, but then also those of you who maybe are a little bit more quiet, you can shine in this activity as well. So here's what's going to happen. We've first been discussing pain and suffering. That's the whole title of the unit, so that's what we've been discussing, and how God is related to that and how it works with God. I would ask that whenever you get assigned your scenarios, that you carefully and prayerfully consider your response with your group. You'll have a small group, and then you're going to create a script. Yes, an actual script, in which you're going to use the scenario that I give you. And it's already all set up, so no worries, it's all ready to go. I've done all the work for you. I'm going to ask that you give it the consideration of not only your own convictions, meaning your own beliefs, but also, most importantly, the information you've learned in class. because that's really what I'm checking you on. Like, I want to know how well you've listened and how well you've paid attention to the lessons. And if you need to look back, that's what your notes are for. So be sure to include in the script a response to the individual or individuals who are suffering or in pain, because there's going to be someone in each scenario or someone, a group of someones that are dealing with suffering and dealing with pain. You're going to have about 20 or so minutes, but really you might have a little longer than that, because I'm sure that this lesson has not taken me that long to explain on my video here as it would if I were in class with you, because as you all know, I tend to go on and on with my stories and things. So I haven't had nearly as much fun as I would if I was there with you in class. But I think you'll have plenty of time to get this done. So it is for 20 minor category points, and I'm going to go over really quickly the rubric with you, and then I will show you where you're going to find your info. Okay? So you're going to work, this is your rubric, you're going to work collaboratively, meaning working together. Collaborative means that you work together with your group to produce a script for your assigned scenario, and you are all already assigned a scenario. It's all set. You're going to type this neatly, so neatly, I'm going to say again, so that we can read it, and post it to the collaboration space in OneNote under your group number with the group numbers names listed. And it's already, don't look yet, but it's already there for you. So all you're going to do is go to that space when I tell you in a minute, when you find your groups, and then you're going to start working, and you'll get together and discuss and then respond. Your script is going to be the equivalent of a 1 to 2 minute exchange, okay, dialogue between at least 3 characters. Now, you all have at least 3 people in your groups. Some people have 4 in some classes, but everybody has at least 3, so you should be fine to come up with at least 3 members, in which each of them has a speaking part. You need to say something, and I mean, it needs to be more than just hello or hi. Just get everybody involved. Even those of you who are not drama people, you can still say something. Your script needs to include an appropriate and accurate response to the individual or individuals suffering, which reflects the content learned in class. Okay, here's what this means. You need to respond appropriately based on what we learned, not just like what you think that somebody would say. Go back and look at how you might respond considering everything we've talked about. Okay, so be smart about this and be intelligent about it, right? So here's where I'm going to show you to go. So I'm going to flip around. Don't get confused here. Okay, I'm going to pop over to OneNote. Okay, and this is actually not your class. This is an example from last semester, and this is not one of the scenarios that you have. I have made up new scenarios, but I'm using a scenario from last semester to show you and model for you. Remember, I told you I like to always make sure that you have an idea and then I model for you what to do. So these were some students from last semester who they did this activity, and their scenario that they were given is that a girl that they knew, her family lost everything in a fire, and they even went the extra mile and included a photo for the class to sort of get them focused and have the whole scenario in the background. They put it up on the screen when they presented, and I will say it did actually help to sort of get us in the frame of mind that this was what was going on. So here's what they did. Okay, first they took the script right here, and then they wrote it out and have it listed, and they gave everybody a job, and they gave them roles. They even gave us some stage directions. So it said, neighbors and friends are gathered to help a family whose house has burned down. Katie approaches Lizzie and gives her a hug. So I'm assuming that Lizzie, in this scenario, is the one whose family has lost everything, and Katie is the girl who is kind of coming over and supporting her, and then you've got Lizzie's mom and dad are involved in the story too. So you had remember you had to have at least 3 people. So Katie says, what happened? Are you okay? I saw the fire from my house. And Lizzie, who is crying, says, I don't understand why this happened to me and my family. We don't deserve this. Okay. So Lizzie, who is the one suffering, and mom and dad are asking, why would God do this to them? Why is this happening? So mom says, we lost everything. All of our memories and our pictures are gone. Dad says, how will we ever rebuild our lives? Why did God punish us? All right, so then we have an additional person, Caitlin, or maybe it says Katie. I'm not sure which one they did. But Caitlin says, no, it says Caitlin. Okay, God didn't punish you with this. Natural disasters happen to good people, but he never intends for you to suffer. So when mom says, if God doesn't want us to suffer, then why did he do this to us? Why doesn't God love us? So Caitlin responds, whoops, went too far. Caitlin responds, God didn't do this to you. He allows these things to happen, and through the good of others, we become stronger. I know this is hard, but God will guide you through this. He loves you no matter what. And so Katie says, if there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. We'll be praying for you. And her dad responds, thank you so much. We're thankful to have such great neighbors like you. And then the last stage direction is the neighbors walk away, leaving the family in front of the burning building or burning house. Okay? So this is what you're doing. And like I said, you're going to find your block and all of the blocks have their collaboration space already filled, and the assignments are already there, and your scenario is already there for you. So once I finish here, you're going to get to work and have yours posted. And then when you're finished, if there's time, you could share them in class, but I'm going to ask you to share them in class so that I get to see them too next time. So either way, you can even share them in class today and then like do a trial run and then show them next time. Up to you all, depending on how much time you guys have. So I will be signing off now, and that is your only homework. If you don't, I don't see that you won't get finished with that. I think you'll be fine getting that done. So I don't expect you to have any other things for homework. You won't have an Acts reflection because you haven't gone to Acts again. You went, and hopefully your Reflection 7 is already posted and completed and is in your OneNote notebook ready for me to look at. You will have new Actspirations and everything up next week, and I hope to see you all then. I look forward to it. I hope you guys have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you, and good luck with your screenwriters workshop.